Well, welcome to Durbania Live. Bryan Lomax is going to join me, and we are going to rank our bottom 5 and our top 5 episodes for season 2 of Smallville. Are you ready to get into this? Let's do it. As soon as I hit play. There we go. Well, Mr. Bryan Lomax, welcome to the wonderful world of Durbania. Thank you so much for joining me here today for Smallville Season 2.
Yep. Happy to be here. Must be said. Long time coming.
Yes, it is. Why don't you real quick let people know where it is they could go find our Season 1 ranking video where we did that live together.
Well, they can go and find that over on my channel, Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. We, as you just said, we ranked our bottom 5 episodes first of season 1 because we thought get the negative out of the way, end on a positive. Yep. And then we ranked our top 5 episodes of Smallville at season 1. Just because like we said in episode 1, Smallville, love it. I'll be a fan until the day I die, but it's not without its stinkers. So it would be remiss of us to not go over those. But yeah.
Yes. So this is our bottom 5. We're definitely going to hit those stinkers first for our season 2 talk, and then we're going to hit those wins at the end for our season 2 talk. So, Bryan, like in general, season 2, better or worse than season 1?
Better. Definitely better, yeah. Oh, yes. I would say absolutely 100% definitely better. I think that from the moment you hit the ground running, basically. Yeah. Like the start of season 2, the first bad episode you get, it's not like a horrendous episode, but because it comes on the back of what is basically, I think, 3 or 4 maybe, just knock out 5 out of 5 episodes, you feel it perhaps more than you would. Like that very episode does actually appear in my bottom 5, and I think if that was a season 1 episode, I might be a bit more forgiving of it. But as I say, they come out of the gate swinging. And you just have like boom, 4 in a row, and then suddenly you get this average episode, and it suddenly feels like an absolute stinker as a result. But yeah, there's more of a lore, I think, that is built up in season 2. That kind of gets going, so it feels less freak of the week. Even though there's, I've not done a count, but there's probably just as many Freak of the Week episodes, to be honest, but it doesn't feel that way because it feels like they're building up lore a lot more, and Lionel Luthor kind of really starts to take off in it as well as like the villain of the show, really. Which is always good, So,
Ryan, I apparently, since I hit live in StreamYard, it was still set to private on my channel, and I just now made it public. So those of you that are watching and are just joining us, this is my first time using a very cool service called StreamYard, and I'm brand new, so you'll have to excuse the little mistakes. Now, why we're private, you might see this in the replay, but I'm just so proud of the fact that I figured something like this out. So hold on. Let me go here. And look, I'm live, and I'm playing the intro. That conversation that you just came in the middle of, as I'm going, now why am I not seeing this pop up live, is Bryan talking about how he believes season 2 of Smallville was definitely an improvement upon season 1. And I especially like what you said about Lionel. Like, they definitely start taking Lionel in some interesting places this season.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I was given some golden nuggets there, and they were just getting lost.
No, they were great golden nuggets. But, so on the replay, I think people are definitely going to get some good golden nuggets there for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh man, gosh. Well, thank you
Lesson
guys
learned.
Yeah, lesson learned. And so definitely check out Bryan Lomax's channel right now, or not right now, when this is over, if you haven't seen our season 1 video where we did our bottom 5 and top 5. And now we are going to rank our bottom 5 and top 5 episodes of season 2. We're going to start with the bottom ones because Smallville is a great show. So let's get the bad stuff out of the way. Smallville is one of the best shows ever, and it also has some of the worst episodes ever. And we want to end on the good note. So let's go ahead and kick some things off here. And be sure to join us in the chat. We want to hear your thoughts on these episodes, hear your thoughts on Smallville, and to hear your thoughts on season 2. So go ahead, Bryan, and give us, we're starting with the bottom, the 5 worst. What is your number 5?
Just hold that thought. Just because you did have it set to private before we went.
Oh yeah, you want to share this video?
I wasn't able to share the link, so yeah. So I'll just throw that in there. Type. Sorry, guys. This is really unprofessional on our part.
You know what? It's okay because that's the point of live. Live is meant to see your favorite YouTube personalities, shall we say, unplugged, and then suddenly, instead of being neatly edited, we just kind of have to go with it on the fly.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
Is the truth.
Okay, so here we go. We're good. I've got to try and remember what my bottom 5 were now.
Yeah.
Just throw the card up.
Let me throw the card up. Here's your bottom 5. Number 5.
Yes, Visitor is my bottom 5. The bottom of. Oh man, it's all going wrong. So
that's exactly how it should go, Bryan. Everything is going as it should. Man.
I was so well composed when we came in, and now it's all just gone out the window. Right, okay, Visitor. So this is an episode that it's not offensively bad. It's the reason it is number 5 and not just slightly higher is because I do actually think it has a good story. The idea behind it is pretty good, and even though just if you know anything about Superman lore. If you know anything about the comic books and have a wider knowledge of the character, you know that this kid who comes into it, that the story kind of focuses on, you know that he's not Kryptonian. You know he's nothing to do with Superman lore. So it's going nowhere really. But it's more all about how. It's about the idea of Clark finding someone who is potentially a brother, potentially one of his own, and just how does that affect him? And the problem with it is, one, the person that they get to play this character has just nothing for me. I just, again, we've had this issue before. If you get someone who's just giving you nothing, it's a plank of wood. And I feel like maybe it might have been a creative choice to try and make this kid feel otherworldly, to make him feel a bit alien. But they unfortunately take out too much humanity, and instead we're just left with a plank of wood. So there's not much going for it in that department. And when the main character you're focusing on that week, the guest star of the week, just isn't giving you anything, it kind of makes the A plot feel a bit.
It does.
Second is the the final act. I think it does have a chance to kind of step up to the plate, I think, but it loses it in the final act because we have an action sequence that's kind of put there, I feel, for the sake of it. and it really feels rammed in there. So throughout the episode, you've got these bullies, the typical jock douche bullies that we've experienced
and as we said in our first video, if it's a bully, they're a jock in Smallville.
Yeah, and they don't make the most interesting of characters, it must be said. Even when one of them was a main character like Whitney Fordman, they still don't make interesting characters. So you have these stereotypical jock bully types who so they're scared off by this kid because he seems to exhibit a certain power that is very much like something Clark might do. But then it's found to be a trick. It's found to be fake. He faked it. So they come at him again later on, but Clark helps him out on this occasion using his power. And at this point, that would be, I would say, the time where these jocks would say, right, he may have faked that as well. If he did, I don't know how he did it. Either way, the kid is dangerous and I ain't going near him because who knows what he's capable of. So the fact that they come back for a third time at the end, it's really just thrown in there for the sake of having this big overblown action set piece. And it's just... Yeah, it's like I was saying with Drone. If you got a bad episode, just throw some explosions or whatever in at the end and hope that nobody noticed. So it's the same treatment, really.
And that's exactly what you do. My number 5 is the same. Visitor. It's funny because it's like you just came off Rosetta, where we met Christopher Reeve, and he hears Krypton and Kal-El for the first time. And we go into this, and it's not like it's all bad. That's why it's at my number 5 and not much higher, but it's just not good. It's not exciting. Like you said, the actor he leaves you wanting. He doesn't give you a ton of stuff to work with. And so it's just like, he's kind of like, other than the fact that he can heal, because he does have that one power, he's the freak of the week without actually being a freak of the week. It's just not super interesting. And so it's sad because the only good thing is playing upon Clark, excited that maybe he's not alone. Maybe there's another Kryptonian, but there isn't. So,
although I do think that it is a plus. It's definitely a plus that we are getting a freak of the week who isn't a psychopath.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't happen often in Smallville that someone infected by the meteor rock doesn't turn into a total nut job. I mean, debatably so. He's clearly got issues, but he's not a I'm going to kill everyone because I love Lana after meeting her for 2 minutes kind of psychopath. So
yeah, and that's good. So I still don't understand why everybody loves Lana like that. So I'm glad this was not I love Lana and let me kill everybody who is in my path between me and Lana. Oh man. All right, what's your number 4?
Okay, so my number 4 is, and I feel this may be a bit controversial, but it's Accelerate.
All right.
Okay, I say controversial because I seem to, when I'm mixing within all like the Smallville fan groups and things like that, Accelerate seems to be an episode that people actually enjoy or think is actually pretty decent, and I don't think it's a travesty. I don't think it's again, as with Visitor, it does have a lot of redeeming features in it. I think that there is a good story there to be mined. It is a Lana centric episode, so I know you'll love it, Devin.
I can't stand it. But actually, real quick, Aaron White said, "I'm terrible at picking bad episodes unless they are Lana centric." Awesome, Aaron White. I am on that same page as you.
Okay. So yeah, it is a Lana centric episode. My problem is it's just not very well thought out. Like I say, it starts off like a ghost story. Okay, so you've got this little girl running around in the theatre where Lana works and doing what ghosts do, which is freaking her out, playing the projector reel so that the film starts rolling and things like that.
Which you got to think about it. She set that up. What, when, and how?
Yeah,
and
but exactly. But this is my point. This is exactly my point. If it is a ghost story, then that's fine, and that stuff works. But as the episode goes on, you find out it's not a ghost story. This is actually a girl that has been cloned, and she has the power to move really quickly. She's got super speed.
Yeah.
But she is still only one. She's got the body of a 7-year-old girl, but she doesn't have the mind of a 7-year-old girl because she's not actually 7. So, being someone myself who actually worked for 3 years as a cinema projectionist, I can tell you right now, it is not easy to lace up a projector, having never done it before, and run it, especially at the age of 7. So suddenly the intro becomes absolutely ridiculous, because it's a bit like the season 1 episode where the guy's running around naked and he's put the paint all over him. It's just, when you start to think about it, it makes no sense. It's stupid. So she's gone to toy with Lana and pretend to be a ghost, but it turns out actually she was just playing because Lana's her old friend and she wanted to play like they used to. Well, did they used to lace up projectors and stuff and pretend to be ghosts?
They must have. You know, Lana must have realized, I want to run a coffee shop when I'm a teenager that happens to have an old movie theater, and I want to learn how to lace up film when I'm a kid.
Yeah, precisely. So with that mind-numbing opening and then the reveal of who this girl actually is later, making everything else that came before it kind of fall apart, we're then left with an episode which, had we not had that weird intro, does have a pretty cool concept, but isn't executed like all that well, because again, the little girl in it, I'm lukewarm to. She doesn't really creep me out in the way that she should. I'm just like, I can't tell if she's trying to be creepy or whether she's just not that good an actress. And then throw in the fact that you've got the caretaker from Scrubs, who I just can't take seriously for a minute because he's the caretaker from Scrubs. And then it's just like, which he can't help. You know, he's an actor. He's trying to do something different. But I just couldn't take the guy seriously. I kept just seeing the caretaker from Scrubs. So the whole episode to me just felt like a bit of a washout. It's got a good concept. It's got a good idea. And it will be followed up on later in the series with a kind of a sequel of sorts, which I think is actually a lot better than this episode.
Oh, really? Because that sequel's for sure going to be in my bottom, but also that's because of Lana. By the way, if you didn't watch our season 1 video, Lana Lang drives me up a flipping wall. And I wish she left with Pete in season 3. Mike had this to say. He said, let's see, hold on. I had the comment. He said, oh my goodness. And well, he said he likes this episode and he liked the ghost aspect of it. And I kind of liked a little bit of the ghost aspect of it. I think what I really liked was her slipping into super speed in the graveyard and then Clark's slipping into super speed with her and tracking with her. I love things like that. And I loved when they were in the basement and they found all of her clone bodies. Like, that was really cool. And those parts were the parts that were genuinely creepy. But I agree with you. Anything like involving this girl, when she was talking and stuff, like her laugh, like it kind of annoyed me. And she just wasn't really that creepy or scary. And I can't stand Lana and people being obsessed with her.
But going back to his comment, I enjoyed it. When it was, I enjoyed the ghost episode when it was a ghost episode. Yes. The problem is that it's not a ghost episode. It's an episode about a clone who has super speed. So once you find that out, all the ghost stuff, the stuff she did as a ghost, makes zero sense. And that's why it falls apart for me. Had it just been a straight up ghost story, I could have gone along with that. Pick one.
Yeah.
You're either a clone story or you're a ghost story. If you're a clone story, don't have this little girl going around lacing up projectors and playing creepy nonsense that don't actually make sense afterwards. So.
And it's funny because the show, it asks you to suspend your disbelief quite a bit. And it's fine. There's a lot of comic book ways that I can suspend my disbelief. Her powers, that she seems like a ghost because she can move so fast. It's like the Flash. I mean, it's like, okay, in terms of comic book, I could go with that. But I'm with you. It's like, okay, maybe she could set up that projector really fast. But like you, I've been up in that projection booth back in the days before they were digital. It's almost like the faster you do that, the worse you do.
Yeah.
So it's like
I had to have like a couple of months training in order to do that thing. You got to lace them things up about 200 times before it sinks in. So I'm just not buying that this. I mean, like, again, like I say, she's essentially a new life form because she's a clone. She's probably only existed for a few days, few weeks at best. So in what little spare time she's had to break away from the place, what's she done? She's gone and taken projection booth classes. No, it's nonsensical. It's absolutely nonsensical. And that's my problem with it. It's not the fact that it's ghost stuff. Like the ghost stuff at the beginning is really effective. I like that. I'm like, ooh, it's a ghost story. And then you find out, actually, no, it's not a ghost story, in which case it makes no sense. So,
yep. Well, as I dive into my number 4, Will Smith, I want to tell you sorry, because he says that he loves Lana. And I'm sorry. I go ahead and love Lana. I do not mean to offend you. I can't stand her, which goes into my number 4, DICHOTIC. That's the one guest starring Jonathan Taylor Thomas, where he's able to split into 2, and he did Chloe and Lana. Now, his attraction to Chloe makes perfect sense. I would think one date with Lana, and he'd be like, "This is too much. I'm done. I don't need that. The other me will go steady while I'm dating Chloe." But DICHOTIC was just, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just an annoying episode for me. I mean, it's not like it's particularly like the most awful thing that Smallville's ever put together. But, first off, we watched Jonathan Taylor Thomas graduate high school in Home Improvement, I think. And so it's hilarious that he's now playing a sophomore in high school when he's definitely in his 30s. So right there, you're kind of stretching my suspense of disbelief. But the only thing I like about the episode, let me do that. Let me go positive. The only thing I like about that episode is at the end when Clark stands up to Lana and Chloe and said, "All I was trying to do was help you, and you looked at me and treated me as if I was a jealous boyfriend, and yet none of us have ever dated." And when he stood up to them at the end and put them in their place, and he walked out of the Talon with a smile on his face, I was like, yes, Clark. Yes, you put them in, because, I mean, that was annoying to me. It was annoying that, like, Clark, on top of all of his power, seems to have a sixth sense about people. And so he knew something was off. And so he and Pete team up together. And I love that Pete knows his secret this year. I think that's fantastic that Pete was in on it. Yeah. And I think for season 2, they utilized him well. And I think this is one of those places where they utilized him well, teaming up with Clark and, seeing the 2 dates go on at the exact same time and putting all of this together. So, like, that part was fun. But no, I'm sorry. Jonathan Taylor Thomas he didn't do it for me. The episode didn't do it for me. I don't understand people's obsession with Lana. And here he is wanting, his whole goal for doing this is to be like the smartest kid, get the best classes, and he's wasting his time with Lana.
Yep. It's not an episode that appears on my bottom 5. It is actually an episode that I do quite enjoy. I have some fun with it. But I will fully admit that it is filler, not killer.
Yes.
It's one of those episodes where I think the first time you watch it, you can enjoy it. But if you're a diehard Small fan who's kind of gone through the series a few times, it's one of those episodes where the more you watch it, you start to pick up things where you're like, this isn't actually all that good, is it? Really?
No,
And
it's one of those that's so mediocre that I don't really have much to dive into and really rail against, other than him liking Lana. It's just blah. It's a very blah episode.
The thing as well is that of all the Freak of the Weeks that they've had, this is the guy they choose to bring back in the season 3 episode. Is it Asylum, where they're all in where basically it's the first super villain team up against Clark, but we'll get there when we get there. But I just why him? What was so special about this guy? There's a few funny moments in it, unintentionally funny moments, like when he kills the teacher, the woodwork teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, bearing in mind that this dude has to get butt naked in order to grow himself back out of him and go through all that rigmarole. And he does that with so that both of him can go into the woodwork shop while one turns out the lights and shuts the door and the other one kills the teacher.
Yep.
Did he really need to separate to do that? Could he not just like go in there as one guy? It being less conspicuous, you know what I mean? Just like he could have literally got in there, shut the door, been all casual about it, and then boom, knocked him over the head, whatever. But no, he goes through all the trouble of separating himself, only just so that his twin can shut the door menacingly and turn the light off. It's like loads of little things like that are just quite amusing. But it's not a great episode, but I do have fun with it. I have fun with the aspect of him playing the girls off each other and Clark kind of seeming like the jealous type, and then getting to the end and having Clark. Yeah, I love the look on Clark's face when he leaves the Talon after just basically roasting them. And
man, my wife Laura and I both can't stand Lana, and in fact, I just finished season 4 and I'm getting ready to record my review for that. And there's a scene where at the season finale where Lana is fighting Jason Teague's mom, and we were rooting for Jason Teague's mom. Get her off the show. Gosh. But anyway, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not the Lana person, but I forget where I was going with that, but it's a nice little rant.
I think where you were going with it was just an excuse to show some more hatred towards Lana. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And let's see here. Aaron White said, funny how Zachary Ty Bryan and Jonathan Taylor Thomas are in this season, both from Home Improvement. And yes, both graduated high school years ago. And, Aaron, that is one of the things where it's hard for me because everybody in this show is 30 and they're playing 18-year-olds. They look the same age as their teachers and the other adults. So, it's something you have to suspend your disbelief on. But when you bring in these characters, and in this case, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, it was something that just stood out to me like a sore thumb, because it's like he was already on a sitcom all about him growing up and becoming an adult. It makes it even harder to believe he's in high school.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into your number 3. Are you ready to do that?
Yeah.
Your number 3.
My number 3 is a Redux. Yeah. It's about as bland as an episode can get, really. Again, and I say this a lot with when you look at poor episodes, there's still usually something in them that is actually quite good. That is what makes them worth watching again when you're going through the box sets. There aren't many that I would actually genuinely skip over. Yeah. I often think, oh well, the A plot in that ain't that great, but there is that pretty cool B plot. There's a B plot in this where Clark meets his new headmaster, and we find out that of course he's never been in detention or anything like that until this new headmaster comes along.
And of course, he would have been to school on time if not for Lex Luthor trying to be a gentleman and offer Clark a ride, and Clark having a secret.
Yeah. and it's a headmaster that used to teach at Lex's old school. So there's a bit of a relationship there. The problem is that we never see this guy again after this episode.
No, and I think he's recast in season 4. So,
oh man, we got Principal Kwan quite a bit in season 1. So when we got a new headmaster, it was kind of like, oh, this is nice. We're going to get a new character who's a bit different to Kwan, but no, we never see him again.
Just
That's
this episode
it.
never comes back. Yep.
Yeah. So it most of the stuff in this is pretty irrelevant. There's a story in there as well in which Clark wants to meet his grandfather. Again, that's something worth exploring, but it never comes up again. Like the grandfather's never even mentioned again. It's just like, there's a chance there to have an extra extended family member, but he's not. And then you've got the A plot, which is the freak of the week, which is just hokey, really hokey. And the makeup effects on it at the end with the old age.
It's terrible.
They're worse than Amy Adams' fat suit in
Yes.
Craving, quite frankly. So
maybe about the same in badness. It's not good.
Yeah. Again, it's all about execution, and it's not that the ideas in this episode are bad. It's just that some are worth exploring on their own in a more expanded episode rather than bungling them all together and having this kind of mess of an episode in which there's no real through line. And as a result, it kind of becomes forgettable. I mean, I literally had to read my review notes of this one before we went on just to remember what the flipping episode was, to be honest, because it is just that forgettable.
Well, it's funny because I have my notes in front of me for some of these forgettable episodes, and I find myself saying words to stall as I look down at my notes to try to get back together, because it's like, I think that's the thing about season 2 is some of these episodes, it's not that they're just awful, but they're just forgettable. They just don't stick with you. And I have more to say about Red Ox, but I'm not there yet. It does fall in my bottom 5. I haven't gotten to it yet, and I'd love to get there. So here's what's funny. My number 3 and your number 2 are the exact same episode. So shall we talk about this one together? So my number 3, go ahead.
Your number 3, my number 2 is Nocturne.
That's right.
Or Nocturne, if you want to pronounce it that way. I go with Nocturne, but yeah, Nocturne. Do you want to lead with this one? Go on.
Sure. Lana centric. That'll say it right there. It not only is it Lana centric, and not only does it drive me nuts because it's Lana centric, but Byron, who is poor kid, locked in his basement, still manages to be obsessed with Lana. He doesn't go to school. He doesn't see her. So I'm guessing he breaks out at night, goes to the graveyard, creepy girl in the graveyard. Well, I must be in love with her. And so I think here's what really bugs me about this episode. There's elements of this episode that they aren't that bad. And so some stuff about it, I don't mind. It doesn't bother me. But I think what drives me nuts is how melodramatic our Jekyll and Hyde Nocturne Freak of the Week is. And then how melodramatic Lana is. So you take his melodrama and writing sweet poetry, which has Lana all falling in love with this guy. And then you have Clark being jealous over it, which I'm just like, this is not a good look for you, Clark. You got to quit being jealous. And of all people, Lana. And I think one of the things that drives me the most nuts about Clark and Lana is I don't mind the high school crush. I don't mind at some point them getting together. But it's the emphasis when we know he never gets Lana. He's always with Lois. Lana is a secondary figure in the comics, and it's hilarious how big they try to make her in all of these seasons. And so, to me, I think what irritated me most is the melodrama of Byron and his poetry, and Lana swooning over that. It's just, it's foreshadowing her future CW Beauty and the Beast show. It's like the guy's truly a beast, but she loves him. I couldn't even watch that show, but yeah. What are your thoughts on this episode?
It does very little for me. It must be said. Everything you've just said, it's like just the fact that this guy has a fascination with Lana even though he's not even allowed out of the house. It's like, could Al Gough and Miles Millar be any more kind of obvious about their infatuation with this girl? Because it just feels like they want everyone to love her as much as they do. But yeah, it's just so cheesy.
Yes.
And I don't mind a bit of cheese. A little bit of cheese goes a long way, but it's so.
But when Smallville gives you cheese and wine, it's literally cheesy and whiny, and it's just weird.
Do you know what I equate this episode to? You know what this episode feels like to me?
What?
It feels like a Twilight movie.
Oh gosh, it
does. That's what it feels like.
Because he can't be in the sun lest he sparkle.
Yeah.
Or at least he's more impressive than just sparkling. He does turn into some super strong thing, but you know.
Yeah, there's quite, again, it's that whole thing I say, you know, if your episode's pretty poor, throw a decent action scene at the end and hopefully people will forget the rest. There's a pretty good thing with a helicopter there where he's grabbing hold of it and Martha's inside it, which is quite nice. I just wish there'd have been a bit more Beast and a lot less Beauty, because it's painful to watch when when he's trying to be all poetic and Edgar Allan Poe-ish, and it's just I feel like they want to go for that old kind of gothic horror romance element, but it just comes off completely like Twilight. And it's
because here's what they totally miss in the midst of this. This is a Superman story. So the point of a character like him existing is not to be the Beauty and the Beast character for Lana, or, you know, the sparkly vampire for Lana. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to give Clark a challenge. And so I think sometimes, like, in their desperateness to make Lana more important than she should ever be, because she shouldn't be that important. To me, the show should be about Clark and Lex. That's what the show should be about. The focus should be on those two, with Lana definitely as a secondary character. And I could probably take her better if she was that. It's just the fact that they keep trying to make her this primary character along with Clark and Lex. And when they do that, it pulls focus. This should have been a very cool fight between Clark and somebody that is almost equal to him in strength. So Clark needs the sun for his power to work, and this guy needs the sun for his. So, like, it's an interesting thing, and I just feel like they missed it because it became Lana centric.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's that the whole thing is that Lois is the one. Lois is the woman he's destined to be with. Everyone knows that. Even the casual Superman fan knows that. You have to have it built into the structure of the show that after a few seasons, this is going to dawn on Clark. And the moment that Lois shows up in season 4, which is probably too late, to be honest, she should have shown up in either season 2 or at the latest, the early episodes of season 3. The moment she shows up, that is when Clark has to start realizing Lana is not the one. It's just, but for whatever reason, the showrunners really loved Kruik, and I've got nothing against Kruik. I like her. It's the character. You can only do what you can do with the character you've been given. But it's the way they write her, and it's like, we all know she ain't the one, so stop trying to peddle her as if she is the one. Because ultimately what it'll do is it'll cheapen what Clark will eventually have with Lois.
Yep.
And we'll get there when we get there.
And we will. In fact, this week, my goal is Sunday. Hopefully that'll work. Is to have my Smallville season 4 theological review up. And in my notes that I've been writing out for that, I have a lot to say about how awesome it is when Lois gets introduced. I mean, it's like you look at it and you're like, that's what it should be. She rises up and is his equal. And even as you're watching Smallville, it's like Lana is this drain only because they're making her someone she's not. This again,
So when I did my review of season 4, there's a few times where I commented where it's like, when you see Clark and Lois together, there's a bit of banter there, and they kind of poke fun at each other, but it's not hateful. It's like, it's playful. and Clark's always smiling. Like his interactions with Lois produce a smile on his face. It gives warmth to Clark's character, to his personality. It brings that out of him whenever he's with her, and that banter's going. Yet whenever he's in scenes with Lana, it always feels heavy. It always feels like there's angst. There's something to, I'm gonna hide my secret, or do I tell her my secret, or it's just, oh no, I've got to protect
and let's not
her
forget
from the
Lana.
secret.
I demand honesty. You have to be honest with me, Clark. You were there in the tornado, Clark. You're always there, Clark. And if you're not honest, Clark, it's the end of the world, Clark. And it's like, shut up. Oh my gosh, shut up. It's so hard for those two to be in the same room together.
Yeah, it's just you rarely get scenes between them that isn't filled with angst. So, and that's, piece of advice to anyone out there. If you're looking for love and you think you found that person, ask yourself when you're with them, do you smile a lot? Or do you feel like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders all the time? Because if it's the second one, chances are it's probably not the person you're meant to be with. Okay. It's just, seriously, just when you watch the two of them together, when you watch Clark with Lana, when you watch Clark with Lois, it is worlds apart.
Yeah. And honestly, that's one of the things I'm excited about when I record my season 4 review this week, is to draw this distinction that we're drawing right now. I mean, that by itself is like this great little ministry element, because that is so true. It's like, do you have the weight of the world on your shoulders when you're with somebody, or are you laughing and having fun? I mean, my wife and I are best friends, and so I'm now being married and rewatching Smallville. It's like, no wonder Lois is the one. He's happy. Even though he hasn't even told her his secret, he's happy around her. And Lana, it's this burden. It's Well, speaking of Lana being a burden, my number 2 is VISAGE.
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 No.
Visage, yes. And I can't believe this is not on yours, because I know your love for Whitney.
That's why I love it, because you see him get killed.
But it's not Whitney. It's Tina Greer. And I think that's the part that's worse for me, is it's Tina, another character obsessed with freaking Lana. And I'm watching this episode and I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't understand this obsession. Nothing in this show. I mean, she could be, I just don't get it. I'm flabbergasted every time I see these characters obsessed with her. There's nothing else I could say. The only thing I like in this episode is where Tina takes Clark's necklace, ties it around his neck, and throws him down in the cellar. Now, this is one of those things that the episode is stupid, but it gives you something that you need. And the thing that you need is this moment where he's thrown into the storm cellar and his ship reacts to the kryptonite necklace. And it sends off this like bright light, this wave of light that neutralizes the kryptonite. And it leaves you with this question. Was Jor-El, the ship, protecting Clark, his son, or was the ship defending itself? And it's actually a conversation that comes back in the season finale, which I thought that was kind of cool how they brought that back, where Clark is wondering, was it protecting me or was it defending itself? But other than that, I can't stand like the way Tina talks, how she walks around and she's just like, Lana's life is perfect. And she just draws out her words trying to be all sinister and evil. And I'm just like, shut up. You weren't that fun the first time you popped up on this show. This isn't fun right now. Why are you so obsessed with Lana Lang? Her life isn't perfect. Her parents were killed in a meteor shower. She lives with her aunt, and her whole life is filled with angst. How are you missing that? Oh. That's all I got on that one.
Well, I gotta say, I do have to say that this is probably the first time we've been in such disagreement. Is that while this episode doesn't make my top 5, it is one of my favorites of the season. Although there are quite a few favorites of the season. As I say, it's a much stronger season, I think, overall. But no, I like it. I like it a lot. I like the fact that we do get to see Whitney die at the beginning in combat. And I do like the twisted nature. I mean, it is annoying that it's once again someone who's obsessed with Lana, but I kind of like the whole shape-shifting element. I like that we see a few amusing things, like with Lex robbing the bank.
Well, that was the first time, right? That was the first time Tina came onto the show. This time she was Whitney all the way through until she decided.
Oh yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah. No, they're so bland they run together perfectly fine.
No, yes. So this is okay. No, this, but I like the scene where she kills. Oh man, this is you've thrown me.
Oh, the soldier that
totally
comes in with the flag, right?
Yes. So
and it's the guy's dad in season 3 who makes the kryptonite bullet.
Yes. So it's okay. So it's Whitney's mum.
Yes.
I like the reaction of Whitney's mum when she sees her supposed son attack a military officer.
Yeah.
I think the reaction on her is really great, and it's actually a pretty dark moment for Smallville at this point. In later seasons, Smallville will get a bit darker. You know, it'll go a bit more down that rabbit hole. But at this point, this is probably about as dark as they've got. That when Whitney bludgeons that guy, and the reaction on his mum's face is just like, it's pretty intense. I like the super fight at the end between her and Clark when she turns into Clark, and so you got two Clarks going off against each other. I like the performance by Alison Mack as ever. When obviously it's Alison Mack playing Tina Gray, playing Chloe. So it allows her to have a bit of fun with that role, you know, getting all, getting a bit of a lesbian kick thing going on there with Chloe. But no, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't have the problems with it that you. I think all of the problems you have with this episode stem with the fact that it is primarily
that is the primary thing. But you even take that out of it. Tina just was not that good this episode. Just did not stand out. It was just kind of a whatever. What can we do to make Lana the center of this episode? I know. Let's bring back Tina. Yeah, and it's just I don't know. I don't like it.
Okay.
All right. Well, what is your least favorite of season 2? You ready to dive into that one? Here we go. And here's the card.
Skinwalker, not Skinwalker.
Well, Hulu says walkers.
Hulu is wrong because the box set that I have on DVD says Skinwalker, not Skinwalker.
Yeah, and you know what? I would trust the box set over, and then I saw it on Hulu, so I panicked, and now here we are. But apparently nobody can agree on this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So anyway, because in the episode we only get one Skinwalker, which would help to kind of clarify the fact that this shouldn't be called Skinwalkers.
So Hulu, you threw me off. You need to go back and double check your episode names there.
Yeah. Right. There's multiple problems with this episode, but my primary problem with this now there's I'm friends with someone on Facebook. She's also a patron on my channel, Mary Brokop. She loves this episode because she really loves Native American history. She likes the culture. She's very interested in it, and she reliably tells me that there is a lot of stuff in this episode that is genuine kind of folklore within Native American history. That being said, as someone who doesn't really know much about Native American history, this episode feels very much to me like the kind of content you get from white apologists who still kind of want to have the cake and eat it, where they want to use Native American mythology to come up with a story, a cool kind of supernatural story, but don't really get to the nitty gritty of the issues. We have a score by Mark Snow, who is usually pretty reliable. Again, as I said in the first show we did, big X-Files fan, massive X-Files fan. Mark Snow, again, another thing, I did say Smallville took a lot more from X-Files than it did from Buffy, despite people saying it was a Buffy ripoff.
Of course,
one of those things.
Wanting to watch X-Files after our last video that week.
Yeah. So one of those things is Mark Snow, the composer of the music to the X-Files. He is the composer of the music of Smallville, and he does all of the exact. So whenever X-Files would hearken to Native American folklore and mythology, Mark Snow would do particular kind of scores that screamed Indians. It's like when, if you think in your head very quickly, if I wanted to just throw out a score that would sound Native American, what would that be? Get a load of woodwind in there. It's just, it feels so on the nose with the score. It's like woo, kind of like woodwind.
It's very true. It is.
Oh man, it's really,
especially whenever the wolf shows up. It really comes strong in those moments.
It's cringy. It's the cringiest score that I think Mark Snow's ever done. Again, that's just coming at it from the perspective of someone who feels like they're using Native American folklore as a springboard rather than really trying to, this isn't Dances with Wolves we're watching here. This is, this is more a John Wayne kind of, Anyway, so that's the least of its problems. The biggest problem for me, and this is the one that really sours it, is, all right, so we've got this girl, Kyla. Now, all within the space of one episode, right? All within the space of one episode, Clark meets her, falls in love with her, and then has to mourn her. And I feel nothing. Okay? Absolutely nothing. Because you are giving us too much of an arc within too short a space of time. And that arc isn't even the main crux of the episode. The main crux of the episode is finding these caves, which is a really pivotal moment within Smallville lore. These caves will go on.
Is in the cave. Yep.
Yeah. These caves are a big part of Smallville. Now, for me, the whole romance angle with Kyla should not have been in this episode at all. At all. That should have been jettisoned. It should have been gone. It's just, if that was something you were going to do, then it should have been spread over something like 3 episodes. First one, we get to meet this girl. Second one, we get to know more about her, see that Clark is falling in love with her. And then the third one, as he's about to tell her how he feels, he loses her, something like that. If you want us to buy into this romance, if you want to buy into the feelings Clark supposedly has for this, we've been told for the past season and a half that Lana's the one, Lana's the one, Lana's the one. I love Lana. I love Lana. Lana's everything to me. Lana. And then all of a sudden, Kyla comes along, and in one episode, he loves her. She's the one. She's everything to him. And when she dies,
I agree with Rebecca in the comments. She said, like Alicia. You know how they brought Alicia into season 3, and then 2 episodes in season 4.
Yeah.
And this arc you're describing is more present in that relationship than with Kyla, for sure.
Yeah, that's precisely it. That's precisely it. And that's why Alicia works so well. Because they introduce her, they show you that, yes, the two, Clark and her, can have something together, but it is ruined by a fatal flaw in Alicia's character. And then she's gone. And you don't really think about her then until she comes back in season 4. So when she comes back in season 4, there's already a built-in history there. And that first episode when she comes back in season 4 is all about them getting over that history. Is this something they can get past? Is this a hurdle they can get over? Because they clearly had feelings for each other, but is the crimes that she committed something they can get over? And they do a good job of showing you why, yes, that is something they can get over, even if the rest of society can't. So they're building it. It's something that takes place over multiple episodes. So this whole thing with Kyla is just, it lacks any emotion for me. And I've spoken to other people, in fan groups and stuff who love this episode, and the moment where she dies, it gives them the feels, and I'm like, how are you getting the feels from this? One, like, there's nothing from this girl, because we're asked to go on too much of a journey with her in this one episode, and I just don't buy it. Don't buy it at all. So when Clark's there on the floor crying over her, I'm just like,
yep. Whereas I just watched the episode where Alicia died, and he's holding her and crying over her, and
it's painful.
I mean, I can't say that I felt a ton of emotion, but at the same time, I was drawn into it. His performance in that scene was fantastic, and they earned it. Like, they earned that moment, and they earned that reaction from Clark. So it's
the thing is, as well, it's unexpected, because this is a character that we've seen before in a previous season. She makes a return, and then when she makes a return in that episode, she's still there by the end of the episode. So when we open the following episode after that, and she's still there, and her and Clark are having to deal with the scorn from other people, that it's cemented in your mind at that point that, okay, they're doing something with her here. That we don't know where this is going to go. So when they kill her at the end, it's a shock.
Yep.
It's like it kicks you in the nuts. Whereas with Kyla, because she's only introduced in this episode, when she dies by the end of it, it's not a shock. It's expected. It's like, oh, well, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. It's because it's like the episode again. We keep jumping ahead, but it's like the episode. It's a really bad episode where Clark and Lana get this baby, and it grows old, and it's just
that's a horrible episode. Horrible.
So they go through all the stages of parenthood, and then at the end, when it dies, they go through the mourning process. And again, you're just sat there thinking,
"Is this over yet?"
Yeah, I feel nothing. You've tried to take us on too long a journey in too short a time, and because we know this isn't a character that is going to return, we expected them to be done away with in some fashion. So no one is watching this episode and thinking, Kyla's going to be a returning character, isn't she? Yeah. So if she survived at the end of this episode, and then they did something with her in another episode, and then killed her in a third one, that's when you're like, that's when you earn it. That's when you get the shock, because you've been told, we're building this character up. This is going to go somewhere. And then, boom, we pull the rug from under you. That's not been done here. And as a result, the whole episode just falls apart. It really does. It's just not interesting to me. None of the emotional beats that they're going for hit. So
it's funny. Aaron White, he said, I think it was more infatuation. And to your point, because it didn't look like he mourned too long by the end of the episode. And I agree with that, because there wasn't much mourning there. But it's funny because on the one hand, I get the infatuation. And you know why? He was happy around her without the weight of the world on him, the way it is with Lana. In fact, he even has that line in the episode where Lex goes, Clark, what about Lana? And Clark's response was, well, Lex, it's very different when the girl likes you back. And I went, burn! Like, I mean, that was one of those moments where I really liked it. I'm kind of in between loving this episode and right where you are, because I think you hit the core of what's wrong with this episode. It really needed to be a 3-parter somehow, because her arc is a very cool arc if they could have spread it over 3 episodes and got us more attached. I think what keeps me in between, though, not completely hating it, is I love the prophecy of Naman, who will come down and rain of fire, who will be able to shoot fire from his eyes and have the strength of 10 men and will one day be the protector of the world. And then when Kyla dies, you know, the prophecy that that bracelet belonged to the one that would be for Naman, and her dad hands him the bracelet. Things like that I liked. But it's, for me, what I really liked was the prophecy. I loved that sense of destiny, and I liked the unique take Smallville's done here. This is more of a season 3 thing, but what we just really find is that these caves are portals for Kryptonians, for a rite of passage. And so this idea of this cave being Kryptonian and these Kryptonian symbols and all that stuff, it's incredibly interesting to me. I think it's a unique take that Smallville took, and I thought it was bold. So that's what I like about the episode. But it's something that you and I talked about in season 1, where you will get a mediocre episode that has something pivotal that you have to have. This is that episode where they missed such a great opportunity to make this deeper and far more emotional, yet it gives you something where you can't skip this episode. It's too crucial to the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, my worst is one you and I have already talked about, and it's Redox. I just thought that one was just stupid. I mean, there's not a whole lot more I can add. It was stupid. The villain was stupid. The makeup was stupid. The aging effects were bad. I mean, it just wasn't a gripping episode. It didn't pull you in. And like you were saying, the one part that had potential is this idea of, why does Clark not know his grandfather? I mean, Hiram Kent is dead, so we know why he doesn't know them on Jonathan's side. But why doesn't he know Martha's dad? Like, and it shows and highlights kind of the imperfections in Jonathan. But you get that tension. Like, any man who has a wife and has a father-in-law can actually understand this tension. And so, you know, you have Martha's dad who thinks Jonathan is a failure and a nobody who's going to go nowhere. And I always wonder, what does this guy think when, you know, Jonathan is running for office in season 5? Hopefully his opinion improved, but it's to what you said. That plot doesn't go anywhere. They bring him in one time. It's probably the most interesting part of the episode. Like, why wouldn't they bring them in? Because he wouldn't understand Clark's secret. They wanted to keep, that would have been something cool to grow on and maybe build like at least one more episode on. But that guy only shows up that one time and he's never seen nor heard from again. So even the one part that's interesting, they never built on it and they never took it anywhere.
Yeah. It's just, the thing for me is there are two types of bad episode. There are the ones that are just bland and forgettable.
Yes.
And it's like, all right, that happened. And then there are ones that just genuinely annoy the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's what pushes Skinwalker to the top, because it's not, because Skinwalker isn't a bland episode.
It's true.
It's an episode that's got an awful lot of really interesting stuff in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does it in such a way that it angers me, because it's like they're rushing. It's like it's just they've got a good idea and they just want to get it out there. So rather than taking the time, they rush it, and none of the pieces quite fall into place the way they should, and that angers me. So
we get to season 4 and every Lana-centric episode in there, and every rant I'm going to have about that. Gosh.
Oh, you love the witches storyline, don't you? Okay, so we get some positivity.
Right. Yes, season 2. Well, now that we've done the bottom, we've done the worst. Now it's time to do the thing I think Bryan and I love, which is to praise Smallville. So those of you in the comments, so glad that you're here. And we want to hear from you as we're doing our top 5 favorite episodes right now live. Let us know, what are some of your top 5 favorite episodes of season 2? So we're going to kick this off with Bryan. Number 5 for you
is Heat.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is such a very good one. Actually, it's really also, look at that, my number 5. So we have that one in common together, that it is our number 5.
Such a good episode. It's just, they're having fun at this point. With this episode, they're having fun. So you've got this woman, Desiree Atkins, who quite frankly, if my teachers had looked like her at school, I would probably have done better at school. It's just, yeah, it's insane, quite frankly.
Yes.
But it does lead to a lot of amusement in the fact that we learn that Clark shoots fire out of his eyes by getting sexually aroused. And it does actually, again, I've got to jump forward here because it just whenever I think of this, I think of other stuff. Whenever we see someone get heat vision in Smallville for the first time, right? It's through sexual arousal. So we've got Clark here.
Yep.
Gets sexually aroused by his teacher, shoots fire from his eyes. And then when he body swaps in season 4 with Lionel.
Yes.
And Lionel is hugging Martha, shoots fire from his eyes.
Or season 4 when Clark has his memory wiped and he sees Lana for the first time on a clean slate.
Yeah. Shoots fire from his eyes. Now here's the funny bit. Here's the funny part, right? Lana, in the episode Thirst, takes Clark's powers. She sees herself in a mirror, and then moments later, she shoots fire from her eyes.
Oh, man. I haven't seen that in so long that I forgot. I remember her taking his power, but I did not remember that. Oh, my God. Oh, no wonder I very much dislike Lana Lang.
Yes.
Gosh.
So that I don't know if that was intentional or whether it was just bad timing, a bad idea to unleash that particular power at that moment. But based on the history that we've seen with when the fire from the eyes first juts out, when it first happens to Lana, it happens just after she's seen herself in a mirror. So that's all I'm saying.
She must have looked at that mirror and said, "Wow, I'm sexy."
So yeah. But there you go. It's not a good episode anyway, but Heat is a fantastic episode.
It really is.
They're having fun with it. It is the first of multiple marriages with Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
a new pattern introduced. What do we do? Okay, flip a coin. Okay, Clark's gonna lose his power this episode. What do we do with Lex? He's getting married. Okay.
Boom. It's funny but uncomfortable to watch Clark's discomfort as his father tries to help him learn how to get to grips with this newfound power. It's like, well, what were you thinking of when you first? It's just, it's basically the birds and the bees talk, but with someone who's got superpowers.
Which it makes you feel bad for Clark, right? Because being a teenager and having your hormones rage, that's already difficult by itself. Mm-hmm. For Clark, he's a teenager and his hormones trigger heat vision and he almost burns places down. It's like, oh God. Not only is this just an awkward birds and bees conversation, this is just 10 times harder for poor Clark Kent. Yeah.
So it's just a great episode. It's it's an episode filled with confidence by the makers of it. Yeah. I feel like when you watch it, you come off the back of season 1. This is a very early episode. I think this is episode 2 actually of season 2. And it just feels like the makers of the show are in the stride. They know what they're doing. They're cutting loose a little bit. They're having fun with the characters. Yep. The actors are all on form because they know these characters now at this point. They know how to have fun with them. And it's a blast from start to finish.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even you have Lana laughing and smiling at the beginning of this episode when everybody's looking at the incredibly attractive new teacher. And even Clark, can't take his eyes off her. And so, but you get to even see Lana smile and laugh. So it's like, this is an episode where the weight is taken off, even though it's awkward and there's kind of a weight there because he's got to master this new, talent. But that's one of the things I love about Smallville is Clark not having all of his abilities up front. But as he grows and develops, as he absorbs more power from the sun, him gaining a power, then having to learn how to use it, like in X-Ray. Like, it wasn't in my bottom 5 in season 1, but it wasn't in my top 5. But what I loved about it is, you know, he saw straight into the girls' locker room. Thankfully, he didn't burn anything down there. But it's just an episode where he learned he had that power. He had to learn to overcome that temptation with that power, and, you know, how to really use it the right way. And now we have the same thing with this. I love the awkwardness of it, how hilarious it is when Jonathan Kent sets up that scarecrow, and just the look on Jonathan's face, like, oh, I know what you were thinking, son. Oh, you are more human than you realize. Anyway, and so, like, moments like that are just hilarious, you know, and taking something, you know, big, like him gaining a new power, and then having fun with that moment. So I think that's what I love most about Heat, is just they made it hysterical. Yep. All right. You ready for your number 4?
Just one moment.
No
Sorry,
problem.
I'll say it. There's no point in me typing it. I was just saying.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Rebecca Ruse, she just said, I hate that episode. And I was like, what, hate? And then she put thirst, I was like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thirst.
Thirst is just, we'll get there when we get there. So
yes.
But okay.
Yep.
Yes, so where are we? Number 4.
You're number 4.
My number 4 is Insurgents, which is basically Die Hard, but as a Smallville episode. You know, you got a group of hostages been taken hostage in a tower, surrounded by police, and then you've got Clark, who's the only one who can kind of get in there, and it's just, like I've said before, I think Smallville works best when it's not a Meteor Freak of the Week episode. When it's if it's a human villain or something along those lines, that is more where the challenge comes more from the people that Clark loves being in danger somehow, and his secret possibly being exposed if he tries to save them. Those kind of challenges, rather than just, oh, it's somebody with a freaky power and I've got to work out how to beat that power. It's like, this is a prime example. So you got people he loves trapped in there. You've got cameras all on this building. How are you going to get in? How is he going to use his powers without the media taking snaps of him, without Lex seeing him in action, or Lionel seeing him in action, because Lionel's in there with his mom.
Right at the beginning when he's trying to go under the building. Yep.
Yeah. So it's all like, it's just a really great episode, and it's a hostage situation type episode as well. So and I love these kind of episodes. Again, not to bang on about the X-Files too much. There's an episode of the X-Files called Dwayne Barry, and that's like it's a hostage situation episode, and literally, other than a few minutes at the beginning, pretty much most of the episode takes place within one location. It's all built around this hostage situation, and I just think that episodes like that are really good because they get down to the nitty-gritty of just character stuff, because they don't really hinge on big explosive set pieces or this and the other. They hinge on people stuck in a room talking and drama coming out of that. And this episode's no different. The drama comes out of the tension of all these different people having all these different secrets and all these different agendas, and how are they going to navigate around each other when they don't want each other to see what their agendas are and stuff. So it's a great episode.
Yes. Yeah, Rebecca Ruse said the first time Clark flew, sort of. She put flew in quotations. It's like, it really is kind of his first leaping a tall building in a single bound. But instead of leaping over a building in a single bound, he leaps from one to the other. I have a lot to say about this episode, but I'm not quite there yet. So I have it a little bit higher. So I don't want to give away too much of what I have to say. Aaron White says yes, Insurgents, and Mike said I'm kind of indifferent to this episode. I guess I can kind of see that, but I really do like this episode. So here's my number 4. Speaking of episodes that are really, really good and very, very interesting, Red. And I think One of the things that is so interesting about this episode is not just the introduction of a new type of kryptonite where Clark loses his inhibitions and it brings out Dark Clark. It's not just that.
Emo Clark.
Yeah, Emo Clark. I don't want Emo Clark. That sounds too much like Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3.
It's funny. What I like about it is, so let's go with that example. So Spider-Man 3, when he's in his emo phase, he's cheesy beginning to end. And what I like about Dark Clark is the longer he's exposed to red kryptonite, the worse he gets. So what's funny is he starts off emo, like Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3, where it's just like, oh, okay, whatever. But it's funny because he gets progressively less cheesy and worse as the episode progresses to eventually he himself is the freak of the week. I mean, this girl, Jessie, in all kinds of trouble. Her dad has these discs with important information on it. And you find Clark using his powers to get it, coming to this conclusion of, wow, I didn't realize how easy it would be for me to get everything I ever wanted. So you really see the danger in Clark and a dark Clark. If something like that should ever exist, you really see the danger of that in this episode. And it progresses from cheesy to darker, in my opinion. And the other thing that makes it even cooler for me is this is the time, like Lionel Luthor, season 2 is interesting with Lionel. I feel like from season 2 onward, each season they do something kind of interesting with Lionel. The interesting thing they do with him in season 2 is he's blind for about half of season 2, pretending to be blind for a chunk of season 2, and then finally comes clean that he's not blind towards the end. And so kind of interesting. But here was a part where he was genuinely blind, and he hears Clark grab a gun out of somebody's hand and shoot it into his own palm. So he doesn't quite know what's going on. And kind of like what I said in my review, what's most interesting is when you look at season 7 and that Veritas group that they're a part of, and they were waiting on this child to come from the stars. Now, all of a sudden, Lionel has these bullets. And then you have to think about it further because, okay, so Lionel now has these bullets, but then as we find out later, he's got a liver condition and he's trying to find something to cure it. So now he's really after Clark. And then there's a particular episode where we learn all that Lionel had to do with Clark's adoption. So Lionel has done all of this math just based on what he can hear this episode. And I feel like, especially when you've seen the show and you go backwards and you watch this episode, you can feel the full weight of Lionel Luthor's motivation for being obsessed with Clark beginning right here, right now, which builds to very key moments in Insurgents, which are other reasons why I really love Insurgents. So yeah, there's my number 3.
It's great.
My number 4. I'm terrible at math. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I will talk a bit more about Red.
All right.
Later on.
So ready for your numero tres?
So my number 3 is Lineage, and so you just touched on it. This is the episode where we go into Clark's adoption, and I love this episode because it's the first time that we've ever seen anything really to do with, because it's always been like the only stuff I've heard or read or whatever in Superman lore was that when he came down to the farm, it was during a season where there was a storm or whatever.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end of the storm, they came out with the baby and said, "Oh well, we had the baby," and that just all seems a little bit hokey and stuff. So the lore they set up here with the dodgy adoption and all that lot just feels so much better, so much richer, has so much more depth to it, and it's the first time that you fully understand Jonathan Kent's hatred towards Lionel, because you find out that he basically made this deal with the devil. He got Lionel to forge the adoption papers, and then Lionel used that against him to cripple a lot of people in Smallville. And it's just and Jonathan carries that weight, that burden of guilt that he feels having made that deal. but it is a great episode. There's just a lot of really good emotional beats in it as well that work. Like with this woman who comes into town claiming that Clark is her son, and that's the reason all this adoption stuff comes up, because in the end, that's the only way of proving that actually, she is not. He is not her son, and it's just like, I feel sorry for this woman. Like she's nuts. She's crazy. She's a rambling maniac. But then by the time you get to the end of the episode, you understand why. And she's not been well played by Lionel. He's treated her really poorly, and to top it all off, she's lost a child in the process, and it's pretty heavy stuff. And the way they handle it is just so well done. All the performances are on point. The intricacies of the story, the way that it feeds out information gradually over the course of the episode, it's on point. It's a fantastic episode. And I love that element of the lore that they've introduced. And because it ties Lionel in such a personal way to Clark's history,
yes,
it almost makes you wish that this was comic book lore, that this was canon when it comes to comic books, and that Lionel was a character in the comic books.
They tried to bring him into CW's Supergirl. The last season of that show I watched was season 2, and it just was not the same. Like,
right.
It's not Lionel unless it's John Glover. That's the sad thing.
I'm not that big a fan of the Lex there either, to be honest.
Yes, I'm in the same boat as you. I am not a fan of that Lex, but I really don't like Jesse Eisenberg. So, so that's the one I really can't stand. But yeah, I'm not a fan of that Lex either. But yeah, no, one of the things that I liked about Lineage too is not only does it connect Lionel to Clark so personally, and really make you understand why he's so obsessed, but it also shows you how evil he is because of Lucas Luthor, how this adoption, he used it to hide his illegitimate son. And that's exactly who this woman thought she was looking for. She thought this was Lucas Luthor, but it's not. And so it makes it even more tragic for this lady.
Yeah. Aaron White says, yes, Lineage, you could splice the flashbacks and make the pilot a two-parter. You could put those 2 episodes together and maybe edit a few bits out, i.e. stuff with Lana, and just you could make it a movie essentially, like Smallville the movie, because they do tie together very well. And another thing is that you feel like the way they've done it, it doesn't feel like this is something that they've just come up with this year. This season. This feels like something they've been sat on, that they always knew they were going to do this, and they've kind of built up to it. All the stuff within the pilot episode really fits into this in an organic way. So it doesn't feel like they've gone away and thought, oh no, now how are we going to explain this adoption thing? No, it feels like they've worked all this out way back when, and now's the time to reveal it. I like good planning like that.
Yeah, no, I do too. And that's one of the things I really liked about this episode, because I agree with Aaron that they really, really could have made this a 2-parter if they wanted to, because it fits like that. I loved that. I feel like Smallville might lose that a little bit in the latter seasons, but definitely in these early seasons, it was very organic. You could definitely kind of just sense the plan that they had, and it flowed very nicely.
Yeah.
So my number 3 is one we've talked about a little bit. It is Insurgents. So I put Insurgents here at my number 3 because, like you, I agree. Some of the best episodes of Smallville are the ones without the Freaks of the Weeks, without Clark going up against somebody else with power. And in fact, it's something very human that keeps him from using his powers. It's the cop that catches him at the beginning, and she keeps him square in the sights. And you just feel his angst, like, I got to get out of here. I got to get up to that building until finally he comes up with that plan. And I love it because they do such a good job of explaining how Clark is terrified of heights. And so here he is on the roof of the Daily Planet, and he is unbreakable, right? We know this at this point. He knows this at this point. And yet, when he's sitting there and he's like twitching his fingers and he's taking those deep breaths, he's tapping his foot, you feel how nervous he is. And even though even if he falls, it's just going to be like Neo from the Matrix, right? He's going to hit and just get up and go, dang it, I missed it. So it's going to be fine.
The thing is, there's still something at stake there, because if he does fall and hit the deck, all the media is down at the bottom waiting for him. So
he's really got to make this jump. So yeah, his life's not at stake, but something is at stake. And so you feel that angst, and it's so cool. But one of the things that I love about this episode more than anything, again, blind Lionel Luthor, and I believe at this point he's still genuinely blind. I don't think he's faking it at this point. And so here they are hostage, and Martha is his executive assistant. And what I love is they break into his vault and they find refined kryptonite, and they find the octagonal key for the ship. So the fact that they had all of that stuff in there is so very cool. And Martha then looking at that and kind of this look of, what are you doing? And then she looks down and there is a file marked Clark Kent Confidential. And it's like revelation after revelation in just minutes. Like how obsessed Lionel Luthor is with Clark Kent. And again, the full reasons for these obsessions get revealed a little bit later in the show, but it's one of those organic things that really, really works. It's just right now it builds that tension of what did he catch? Like, is he really blind? What's going on here? And then when Clark shows up and displays his powers in that room, and all Lionel could do is hear what's going on, this isn't good for Clark. This isn't good for the secret. So, and then the other part is this emotional pull at the end. And they do so good with this in Smallville. They do it multiple times. But Clark comes down with his mom, and you have this great moment with the Kents as a family. Then you have Lex, and he tries to say to his dad, I did everything. But, Lex was kind of behind the whole hostage situation without intending it to be a hostage situation.
Such a good moment.
And Lionel pulls away from his son. And so Lex is alone. But I think it's this shot in this episode where the camera is pulling back. And so the police lights are reflecting off his face. And it's a red light, a blue light, a red light. And really, that's the inner battle of his inner demons, of that good versus evil, as he's envious of the love with the Kents and his father pulling away from him. And it is one of those episodes that is good all by itself and does an amazing job setting the stage for what is to come.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a moment we've had a very similar moment to it before as well. I think, was it in Jitters?
Yes, that was in Jitters.
Yeah.
Because,
so I think, so very similar thing at the end of Jitters. But it's always heartbreaking when you see, because it's all in that one moment, is that when you see Clark being met by his parents and you see how much they love him, and then you see the difference between when Lex meets his father, and the only time, like in Jitters, I can't remember how it went, but I know, like, here it's all to do with the media, like it's all for show.
Yep.
And it's just what chance does Lex have when this is his role model? This is the steward of morality for him, and of the teacher of ways. It's sad. It's tragic. It's just, it's what makes the character of Lex so compelling. But great stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. All right, you ready for your number 2?
I am ready for my number 2. Red. Yes.
Oh.
So obviously we've already talked about it. It's just, these episodes are always a heck of a lot of fun when Clark's just allowed to be let off the leash. There's not no kind of, it's not that there's no barriers holding him back. It's just there's no inhibitions, but he still has a certain moral sense that stops him going all the way in certain cases. But
like he doesn't reveal a secret, for instance, even though
yeah. So it's just, but it's just, it's just good to be able to see him let go of his inhibitions, and just the scene when he goes to the club with Lana, and then ends up going off with the other bird instead. It's like, oh, Sting. The only thing with these episodes is it always cracks me up how forgiving Lana and Chloe and all them lot are, because he does some pretty horrendous things. And like, same again with the opening of season 3, you know, when he's on Red K, he does get away with
a lot.
Yeah, like without serious explanation, you know, he doesn't even try to explain himself. It's always just, I wasn't myself. It's like, why weren't yourself? You know, it's like,
I mean, he could at least just say, I tried drugs and I was high, or like, you know,
yeah.
To that,
somebody slipped me a pill.
Yes, which in a weird kind of way, it's true for him, because that is a drug for him. Yeah.
So he can say that kind of stuff without lying. So it's not like he's making himself a liar by doing it. It's just,
and Lana is so harsh with him all the time, and then forgives him just so she could be mean to him again, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but she's harsh with him for things that are like, really? Do you need to be harsh? And then when it's like stuff like this, where he really goes off the rails,
I know you
where it's kind of
self, Clark, but be honest with me, Clark.
It's just, it's not quite right. But other than that, it's just it's just good, because you also see the human characters in Clark's life having to go against him. You know, it's like it's the Batman mentality, where Batman always keeps a bit of kryptonite, you know, in a nice safe spot in case he ever needs it. He's that ultimate kind of planner who, you know, always has like his exits kind of figured out. And it's just, we see here that actually even those closest to Clark need to start thinking about those exits, because there are times when they're going to need them. And it's because of this episode where actually later on they do have those exits figured out. You know, there are times during the series where people like Martha or whatever will have kryptonite on hand for just such an occasion, or even Chloe, for example, once she knows his secret and things like that. So it's good seeing Jonathan and Pete having to go up against him at the end, where he's just like so nonchalant about it, and Jonathan has this genuine love. He doesn't want to hit his son. He doesn't want to take down his son.
Even though the hit won't technically hurt.
He's just like him hitting Clark will hurt him more than it will hurt Clark. And that's just on an emotional front. So it's a really great story. I like this character as well. I can't remember the name. The girl who's a bit of a rebel.
I think it was Jessie or something like that.
Jessie, that's it. So you know, she only gets one episode, but I like her. I buy the relationship there with Clark because of the Red K. There's enough reason to go in, you know, to believe in why he'd go off with her and stuff. But because they're never going to try and sell us on her being his future. They never attempt to do that. So, you know, she's only in here for this ride. So what's the character? What's her arc? They give her a pretty decent arc. It's a really good, fun episode with some great serious moments too. Some nice action beats. It's cracking stuff.
No, it is. You know, one of the things last time I watched that episode, I've wondered what happened to Jessie afterwards, because it's funny because you see later in the show certain villains were inspired by Clark. They turned over a new leaf and things like that. This is the one person that has met Clark and never ever wants to see him again. And it's like, oh gosh, it's like you can't really go back and undo that. So in some ways, I hurt for Clark because of even those little things like that. Well, speaking of Red K, here is my number 2, Exodus. The season finale of season 2. It's got to be my top. I debated with this as my number 1, but we'll get to my number 1 when we get there. But I love Exodus, and there's so many things. Like one of the things I love, the episode building up to it, where the day is coming and that message keeps on getting repeated. And so one of the things that makes Exodus even better is by the time you get to the open of this episode, and it opens with a bang. It opens with the ship coming to life, Jor-El speaking to Clark. It opens that fast with all that because the episode before, even though it might be a little mediocre, the day is coming. Clark hearing that voice in the field, the doctor dude, who got downloaded with the information, repeating that over and over and over. And so we know the day is coming, but what is the day? What does that mean? The day when the last son will begin his quest. And everybody's misinterpreting what Jor-El sent to Clark, that, he would conquer the earth and rule it with strength. It's an alien that sent that message, not a human. And so, we don't even have the context for it. And so everybody's reacting to that in complete fear, including Clark. And one of the things that I love about Exodus is you really see how fear takes a hold of Clark. And he's so brave with so many other things. He's so strong and he's able to take so much, but this unnerved him to the core. And it was interesting to see that. So he meets Jor-El that one time and Jor-El says, "Come back to me at noon," which I'm like, why? Just take him now. But beyond that little thing, when the setting of the sun. Yeah. So he goes then at the setting of the sun and it pins him in the corner of the room and draws that Kryptonian symbol on his chest, which I thought was super intense. And I think there is where Clark has real reason to be afraid at that point. But here it also established something kind of interesting because Clark knew taking Lionel's kryptonite key that he made and putting it in the ship was wrong. He knew it. And we know he knew it because he didn't tell his parents that's what he was planning, because he knew his parents would think that's a bad idea. So what that's saying is Clark knows this is a bad idea, but he's going to do it anyway. And so the way he and Pete distracts, Clark zooms in, grabs the kryptonite key. I can't stand Lana. So when I talk about this scene, you understand how good it was to me. When he has the kryptonite key and he's walking into the barn and Lana comes out in her, wedding gown, ready to, go as Clark's date to Lex's wedding. The music that is playing in that scene, it's not Lana, it's the music and the weight on Clark. Like when Clark is talking to her, I feel like they did a good job with Tom Welling's acting there, with the writing in that scene, that it could have been any other girl there. It could have been Chloe, and I still would have sat there and felt this tremendous fear and weight on his shoulders because he is going to war with an alien force from his planet, and he really doesn't know what the outcome is going to be. He just knows what he's doing is wrong. And then he blows up the ship, which sends a shockwave, which rolls his parents' truck, and Martha loses her baby. And the fact that Clark knew this is wrong, made that decision, we have that consequence, and now he has to live with it is powerful. The scene in the hospital room where Jonathan is like, "It's too late. Your mother is lying in a hospital bed." It's like, you don't need to say much more beyond that. Like the performance between Tom Welling and John Schneider, and that is just incredible, building up to him putting back on the red kryptonite ring, because now he is so scared, so fearful, and so feeling so guilty that he slides on the ring to numb all of that stuff so that he could run away from what he shouldn't run away from. And so many levels, this episode is incredibly powerful to me. I mean, what did you think of this one?
It's actually not one of my favorites when it comes to the season finales.
Oh, well, there are other season finales that are better, but come on, this was good.
It's just, there's something about the last act for me that I don't know. I've never quite been able to put my finger on it. I think we do go, like we said before, with like Emo Clark with the red K, and in Red he's not really emo so much. He just becomes a bit of a bad boy. Whereas at the end of this, it is like proper emo. He's like,
it's true. That is more
puts on the leather jacket and the shades. Yeah. I'm gonna put the shades on because I'm so sad and I need to hide my eyes. And then that shot of the stuntman riding off on the bike because they weren't allowed to put Tom Welling on the bike. It just looks rigid. But I do think it's a very good episode. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. But I've never quite been able to give it that 10 out of 10 because I don't know. There's just it just doesn't grab me as much as like with Tempest. You come in and you hit the ground running. You know, Lionel flies in, drops that bomb.
Yep.
Flies off. You got the weather building all the way throughout, and the scenes are building all throughout. You got 3 separate. You know, you got the Clark stuff, the Lex stuff, the Lana stuff, and it's all building alongside each other, and all comes to a head at the end. And it all, I don't know, it feels, it's just more operatic, I guess. Whereas here, it is all about Clark. This one, and in many ways, that's you know, it's a good thing. But obviously, we also get the stuff with Lex when his plane goes down.
I almost forgot about that. I always get so consumed with Jor-El. I constantly forget to talk about Lex and his plane going down.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and it's just I feel like this episode feels so much about Clark that it's almost like the big moments with Lex almost gets forgotten, to the point where you come back in season 3. And then it's not until you see Lex on the island or whatever where you're like, oh yeah, he went down with a plane, didn't it? You know, and it's like, so it's just, so there's bits like that. So whereas with season 1, every character got their due, and I felt like, whoa, it's all kicking off for everybody here. For this one, I feel like it's kicked off for Clark, but in a really sad kind of downbeat way. And then everything else kind of just becomes a bit of a blur. So all the drama that's in it is really well done. You know, it is a great season finale. I just don't think it quite lives up to how good a season finale Tempest was for me. That's why it's a 9 out of 10 and not a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. For me, this was the next level. It felt like it took it to the next extreme. And I was like, oh gosh, this is so good.
Okay.
Well, Rebecca, she said the soundtrack is awesome on that episode. Aaron said Exodus, one of the best season finales of the entire series. Well, you just heard Brian's thoughts on that. And then Scott says the last 2 episodes were insane. Yeah, I think the last 2 episodes of season 2 were pretty insane. I think, like you said, season 2 with Clark especially, ending on that downbeat note, does a good job of setting the tone for season 3 being the darker season that it is. Yeah. Well, shall we do your number 1?
Hit it.
Here we go.
Precipice. This is such an underrated episode. So underrated. I rarely see this hitting a lot of people's top 5.
It hit mine.
Well, there you go. I think I love the character of Lex, you know, so any episode that kind of swings the focus onto him a bit more, I'm really invested in. I also love episodes that deal with a theme in the main plot and the subplots. You know, we talked about Redux, and one of the things that turns that into just a forgettable mess is just that there doesn't seem to be any real through line. It's just we've got all these 3 different storylines that we could have done in separate episodes on, but we just thrown them together to create some filler. Whereas this one, they've got a theme and they explore it, and that theme is about violence, particularly violence towards women. But the episode looks at, well, what are the different ways you can handle that? You can kick back, or you can take it and get killed, or you can go to the authorities, and we see all these different ways in which violence affects these women's lives. You got Lana, obviously, who's attacked. She decides she wants to defend herself. I love that it's Lex who kind of trains her up a bit. This is actually a good episode, I think, for Lana. You know,
there's no good episode for Lana. The fact she learns that self-defense in 2 seconds, like, come on.
Devin. Listen, don't let your hate blind you, okay? If there's anything Star
Jedi
Wars has
woman.
taught you, it should be that you should not be blinded by hate, okay?
Lana sends me to the dark side. I gotta work
Yeah,
on that.
I'm not the biggest fan of Lana, but I have to accept when an episode is good, it's good, and I feel like she's utilized well here. Lex's girlfriend that I always forget the name of.
Oh, this is Helen Bryce now, right? Dr.
Helen Bryce, yes.
Yeah.
So Helen Bryce, I like the story there. The guy they get to play her ex, very good in this episode. I think he plays a really good psycho. And again, because he's a human villain, not a meteor freak, there's something a bit more impactful about it. It's weird how the non-meteor infected villains feel more threatening than the meteor infected villains. But this guy is just a grade A psychopath who goes to great lengths and stuff, and Lex has to kind of come to the plate and defend his girlfriend, so to speak, his fiance. And it's just I just really like it. What can I say? It's an episode that I always look forward to getting to because I like the way it deals with those themes. I like the way it shows us the different consequences of violence and the reactions to it. And I like there's a quote in there, and it comes from Chloe. I don't remember the quote specifically, but it was just this idea that because Clark's talking to Chloe about how he doesn't like the fact that Lana is training, doesn't like the fact that she's doing self-defense classes.
Which I don't know why Clark doesn't like that fact. I think it's just his hero complex.
Well, he says as much. He says that he thinks that it's going to cause her to get overconfident, so that when she gets into a situation, she might think she can handle it when she can't. So that's a genuine concern for a lot of people. Is you don't want people to get overconfident and get into a situation where they're then going to get hurt. But it's and again, that's a discussion about violence. And Chloe says something to him about how if taking those classes empowers Lana, and she's not just talking about Lana, she's talking about all women in general. If it empowers her in such a way that she can step out of her door at night, then that's a good thing. And you see this dawn on Clark. You see, through his facial expressions, you see this. This is something he's not considered before, and it is this idea that he's.
And why would he consider that? Right?
Exactly, because he's so used to having these powers, and he's so used to being there for her and being the protector, that like them learning how to protect themselves shouldn't really be an issue for him because he's always going to be there. And it's like, well, actually, no, Clark. People need to be empowered. People need to feel that they can look after themselves and things like that. So I don't know. I've always really loved this episode. It was one of the first episodes I saw.
That'll do it too, for sure.
Yeah, but because it's such a strong episode for me as well, and it was one of the first episodes I saw, it's always stuck with me. And like I say, I just think thematically they explore something in a really good way. It's really tight. It doesn't go on tangents that don't feel relevant to that the A plot feels relevant to the B plot and vice versa. So
yeah,
and Lex is great in it. Michael Rosenbaum.
Well, Lex is great in everything.
Yeah.
He
just because
live action Luther.
Yeah, because he gets so worked up about this guy going after his girlfriend, and we see the potential there for vengeance. How violence can inspire more violence through the means of vengeance. And I love the way Rosenbaum plays it. I think his performance in this one is great as well. And also the woman who plays Helen Bryce is really good in it as well. The emotional state she has to get into in various points. So for me, it ticks all my boxes. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Number one.
I can definitely see why you put that at your number one. It's underrated for sure. Malcolm, he wrote, I don't know why there's so many Lana haters. And it's almost like I can't help it, but it's something you and I said earlier, just to respond to this comment. It's the fact that we know he ends up with Lois.
Yeah.
And so making her such a big deal when she's not. But also, like you and I said, when Lois pops up, it's lighter. They're having fun together. And with Lana, it's so heavy and so dramatic and soap opera-y. And I just can't, like, I just reached this point where I can't take it anymore. All right. So, lack of Lana. Here is my number one. Rosetta. I love Rosetta.
Most people do.
Yeah. Well, it's my favorite for so many reasons. And probably one of the big reasons is probably the reason everybody will say it's Christopher Reeve. And one of the things that makes it so great, though, it's not just Christopher Reeve, because you could put him on there and be like, oh, here's Christopher Reeve, Superman, and he's, passing the torch to Tom Welling. And, you could just do that and have it be a cute little cameo. But they didn't make it a cute little cameo. Behind his cameo, they did fantastic build-up. There's fantastic writing. And while Christopher Reeve and Tom Welling are talking and they're playing the original Superman, the movie music underneath it, and the way they're utilizing that music, it makes it feel cinematic instead of like I'm watching a TV show. Like, it just got so deep. And on top of all of that, I think I love everything else about this episode. I love that in season 1, Clark has this dream. He's hovering over Lana's bed. And when he wakes up, he's hovering over his own bed and collapses on his bed. So season 2 takes that concept and takes it to the next level, where he's dreaming of flying over Smallville, going into the caves, and then taking the key and putting it in the keyhole in the cave. And then when he wakes up, he's laying in the middle of the road. Like, he was actually in his sleep flying over Smallville. So even though they have this rule, no flights, no tights, it's nice how they bend that rule. Like, come on, this is Superman. Yes, he can fly. He just doesn't know how to use it yet. And so, like, that was a really, really cool moment. And I also love when he puts the key in the lock and it shoots that light at him. I love that it's coming out of it rainbow colored and hits his chest, and coming out of his back is just bright white. So it's like all the color is the information, and it's coming out white out of his back because that information is downloaded into his brain. And so that's one of the things I loved about the Kawachi Caves and that whole plot line, kind of giving us that extra prophetic thing that Clark is going to be the protector of the world. But it also gives us cool things like putting the key in the keyhole there and it downloading Kryptonian into him, so he can actually read the symbols and know what they mean. And then the key forces him to burn that symbol on the barn, which, I don't know, I'm assuming because of Virgil Swan and his connection to it, like it was trying to signal Virgil. I don't know, but I don't care. It's awesome when he finally gets to Virgil Swan and gets to meet him. And what I love about that whole sequence is the 2 messages that Clark gets from his parents are warm and they're loving. And it's kind of like that typical picture of Jor-El that we always have. And then I love when he comes home, and we've had all of this time where he's striking out to be independent. His parents don't trust this strange billionaire. Do not reveal your secret to this billionaire. And Clark says, no, I need to know my origins. I need to know who I am and where I'm from. And so this is like that first step where he's stepping into adulthood. His parents disagree, but he knows he needs to do this. It's not red kryptonite. He's not doing anything horrible. It's a risk right now he needs to take for himself, and he takes it. And he gets those 2 loving messages from, Jor-El. Here's Krypton and Kal-El for the first time from Christopher Reeve himself. But then he comes home, and he doesn't want to open up his ship alone. He needs Jonathan there with him. And I loved the emotion in that. But I also loved the emotion of when Clark read the message and it said, on this planet from this star, Sol, you will be a god among men. Reign over them with strength, my son, for that is where your greatness lies. They're a flawed race. Rule them with strength. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. And that message is cold and scary, contrasting to those warm, loving messages that he got earlier. And so I love how they set the stage for Exodus and meeting Jor-El for the first time, and kind of this weird relationship, this back and forth. Is Jor-El good? Is Jor-El evil relationship we're going to have as the show progresses? But I love this moment as a foundation they laid for that.
Yeah, it's a very good episode. I did give it a 10 out of 10, so it is one of the, it's one of those episodes that narrowly missed being in my top 5. I think the reason I put something like, say, Lineage over this is because a lot of the big reveals in this episode, I think, would have a lot more impact for me if I didn't know all this information already.
That's true.
Like a lot of it is lore that is directly from the comic books. Admittedly, Virgil Swan not so much, but he's a method that they're using to deliver actual comic book lore. So when he says something to Clark that to Clark is a big whoa kind of mind-blowing moment, it doesn't feel quite as mind-blowing to me because I knew that already. I knew that before Clark did. It's just like, oh right, we've got there. Don't get me wrong, like I say, 10 out of 10 episode. It's great how they do that. I can imagine if I was someone who didn't know anything about Superman, if I hadn't seen any of the movies or read any comic books or anything like that, if I just came to Smallville not really knowing anything about Superman, this episode would really be like, boo, like, just big piece of information, but all the stuff that's getting told to us, I feel like is stuff that it's almost like I'm ticking boxes. Yeah, right, okay, right, yeah, boom, boom, cracking. Now we can get on with the show.
Yeah.
But then the episode's over, and I'm like, oh, that was the show. All right, fair enough. They did it in a really good way. If you're going to do it, that's how to do it. Whereas, say something like Lineage, that deals with lore of the show, i.e., Clark being sent to Smallville and being taken in by the Kents. That's comic book lore, but it gets to the nitty-gritty of how that went about, the logistics of it, how Lionel got the adoption papers sorted and all. So it kept me interested, it kept me intrigued. So when stuff is being revealed, and Lionel's threat to Jonathan, which was ultimately what made Jonathan hate him because of the whole horrible stuff Lionel did, all of that is new. So it's taking the lore, it's giving us the lore, but it's adding so much more onto there that makes me feel like, even as a Superman fan, even as someone who knows the history of the character, is still getting something new. Whereas here, I don't get that so much. Again, like I say, still a perfect 10 out of 10 episode, but I have to give it that 10 out of 10 looking at it through the lens of someone who perhaps doesn't know as much about the character.
And Rebecca said that very same thing. She said, I didn't know when I first watched it. And she said it really blew her mind. So, it's funny. It's like I knew what I knew, not from the comics, but from the Christopher Reeve movies, which is why, to have Christopher Reeve deliver this information was powerful. But you make a really good point, because Lineage gives us a new Smallvillian take on a different part of Clark's lore. And it does such a good job with that and tying crucial characters together. And so I see what you're saying. And Rosetta, it kind of ticks the comic book boxes, and it does an excellent job. But it's going through and ticking those boxes, which really you see kind of the unique Kryptonian take by the time you get to Exodus, because Jor-El is so cold. Because he's so threatening. And it's weird, I guess just as a preview for when we get into season 3 and later, it's just interesting how back and forth Jor-El is. And I mean, what do you think about that real quick? I mean, why not talk about that real fast? Like the interpretation of Jor-El, where it was so back and forth, where some episodes he seems so cold, but other episodes it's like, come on, Kal-El, I just wanted you to fulfill a destiny. Like, what do you think of this take?
Well, I really like it, because it is actually one of the more interesting aspects of the show, because I mean, you do your theological reviews of them. It's no secret that, if you look at certainly all the cinematic and televisual interpretations of the character, there is always a Moses or a Christ-like allegory drawn to the character, So there is definitely a religious aspect to the character of Superman. And Jor-El, in that regard, can always be seen as as the God character, the father talking from the heavens kind of figure, giving direction. And I think when you look at it like that, it's interesting because it shows you how we relate to the notion of God and how some people can look at something that, God says. If you take the Bible, for example, God says this. Some people can look at, well, if God says that, then he must be evil, because how could a loving God say something like that? And that comes from a place from the faith perspective, from the person who does believe that God is a loving Father, and that comes from a place of understanding that actually we don't know everything, we can't see everything, we don't know what's past this next wall. So while this instruction here may look weird, freaky, evil, whatever, it's only once you do it and you get past that wall that you realize what it was all for. And that's the way they play Jor-El throughout the series. A lot of what he says just seems crazy, wacky, but it's only when Clark doesn't follow through with those instructions that it has consequences that actually make you feel like perhaps it would have been better just doing what he said. And that will come into play in a big way in like season 4 and 5, when Clark's still neglecting to do. I mean, because Jonathan Kent. Yeah, because exactly. Like the whole thing with Jonathan Kent, Clark has a decision to make, and it's not about Jor-El saying I'm gonna kill one of them. It's simply about him saying, look, there's consequences. I'm warning you here. I'm not giving you this warning to spoil your fun. I'm giving this warning so that you're prepared, that when something happens, and that's the way I think they play Jor-El. It's as this almost godlike kind of father figure who knows more than we do, than Clark does, than the human characters around Clark does. And it's like it's forcing this idea of, when is Clark going to learn to trust in his father? Can he trust his father? Will he ever be able to trust his father? And so, it's an interesting aspect to the show for me.
You just blew Rebecca's mind, by the way. So and those are all such really good points, because it's funny, because usually when Jor-El says, Clark, do this, if you don't, there's consequences. To us, it sounds like he's threatening Clark. It's like almost like I will bring about these consequences. But what you really see, Jor-El brings about no consequence. Jor-El's saying, look, do this and this consequence won't happen. Like, for instance, season 3, the very premiere, he talks about this was a test and Clark wasn't ready yet. But, if Clark was ready, and let's say he met Jor-El with a bit more courage, well, then season 3 would have been the quest we went on in season 4. And think about how fast that could have been wrapped up, and the 3 stones made one. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because, we definitely want to talk about that anew when we get there. But see, we, the audience, have that benefit of hindsight, and Clark does not. And so here he is listening to a voice whose thoughts are not his thoughts, and his ways are not his ways. In fact, this voice's thoughts are higher than his thoughts, and his ways are higher than his ways. Mm-hmm. And it's about him learning to see that and comprehend that, and that Jor-El is not threatening him. Jor-El's not speaking hate towards him. Jor-El is trying to guide him and call him to a higher destiny. I mean, if you look at Moses in the burning bush, and there's this moment with the burning bush where God raised his voice a little bit. And there's this study note in my Bible that says this is not like the wrath of God in this instance is God's mercy and kindness, because if Moses didn't rise up to this, well, God was going to deliver his people, and somebody will deliver those people. But God did not want Moses to miss out on that. And you can sense that, with Clark always kind of being more of a Moses Messiah figure, and God speaking to him. It's this moment of Jor-El's like, you have a destiny. Don't miss it.
Yeah. Context is everything. And it's just like, understanding can only be found when you have full context. And there are many what you would say Gethsemane moments for Clark throughout the series when it comes to him and Jor-El, and this is one of them. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus never failed that test. When he was taken out to the desert, he didn't fail that test. Here, Clark fails. He fails the test. He's not the Messiah. He's he makes the wrong choice. He doesn't listen to his father, and there are consequences. So I like that element. I think it's one of the backbones of the show that will repeatedly come to the fore.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Brian. I think we probably should end this pretty soon, or we might begin our season 3 video like right here, right now. And I haven't picked my bottom 5 worst or best yet. So, well, Brian, one more time, where can people find you and find our season 1 video?
Well, you can find me over at Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. That's where you'll also find our season 1 video. You can also find me over on another channel that I do called The Movie Evangelist, which is where I take a look at movies specifically from a Christian perspective, just to look at how faith in film, really. How is faith expressed through films, even films that you might not consider have any kind of expression of faith, because I do think that narrative, it's a funny thing. I think so much of Western narrative is shaped by biblical ideas that even a lot of the time the makers of them don't even realize how much they are. So Movie Evangelist and Bryan Lomax Movie Talk.
Yep, and I have the link to Movie Talk in my description. I will add the Movie Evangelist there. Definitely go check out both of his channels and subscribe to them. They're both fantastic. So head over there, subscribe to both of them. Check out our first video, Aaron White Worst in season 3 is, oh gosh, what's the name of that episode? I can't picture what's that episode? You know what he said? I can't remember that episode. Crisis was okay.
Crisis was all right. It was he had a reasonably good send-off for a character.
Oh, Lana Centric. That's what you're saying. I thought that was the name of an episode, and I'm trying to pronounce it different. God, season 3 is Lana Centric again, and Crisis. Yes, I'm with you. Yeah. Well, we'll get more into that in season 3.
We'll
definitely also hit that subscribe button right here on Durbania. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us in the comments and was commenting as we were going. It was a lot of fun looking down at my phone, seeing the comments as they were scrolling up and seeing what you guys were saying as we were going. So just a huge thank you to all of you for being a part of this. And this was my first time using StreamYard and going live with this. So a few technical difficulties at the beginning, but thank you so much for powering through that and being a part of this conversation with us. It means a lot. So hit the subscribe buttons on all of our channels, and we will catch you for our next Smallville video. I'm Durbin. This is Brian. Wait, this is Brian. Have a good one.